Welcome, welcome. It is Saturday, October the 4th. This is Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis, and tonight on HHL, we're continuing to monitor one lone tropical wave in the far eastern Atlantic. Now, the development odds for this system have actually increased, and when we look at its presentation on satellite imagery, you'll be able to see why. I think it's in the beginning stages of really starting to get its act together. And in the eastern Pacific, yeah, a lot of activity ongoing there. Dual tropical systems with the addition of Priscilla that developed as a tropical storm out there. Now we're up to 16 named storms in the eastern Pacific. And usually when we have activity in the eastern Pacific, it kicks up the wind shear in the Gulf and the Caribbean and lowers the activity in the Atlantic basin, with the exception of the far eastern part, the main development region, which that's where we're watching that other wave developing at. All right, Atlantic tropical activity, looking at climatology. Of course, the peak on September the 10th. Here we are in a pretty active, usually, first half of October. October is overall active, not as active, of course, as leading up to the peak in late September or early September into late September, but still pretty active month. So we'll see if we do get there in terms of more named storms in the foreseeable future. Where do we usually look for activity in October? Well, the Gulf. It's really always an area that has activity, but it's highlighted a little bit more in the month of October. The Western Caribbean, a lot of times when we get tropical waves transiting across the Caribbean, they make their way into the Gulf, where this time of the year, very, very warm sea surface temperatures there. And, of course, the Southwest Atlantic, which we saw a lot of activity already there. Imelda, Umberto, Erin, all traveling through that part of the basin and becoming their strongest at those points. Now, October hurricanes are not unusual. In fact, just last year we had Milton. Remember that one in Florida? 2024, and Michael, Cat 5 in 2016, also in Florida. Superstorm Sandy happened about 13 years ago. Wilma was a big one in 2005, the big historic year then, and Hazel way back in 1954 was an October hurricane that was a big deal. Out there in the basin right now, there's really nothing that grabs your attention. We've got a little bit of activity here in the Bahamas, Southwest Atlantic. Another weak tropical wave here, but this is our tropical wave here that probably will be tagged as an invest in the next 48 hours or so, I'd imagine, with the development odds now up to 60% over the next 7 days. Even the short-term probabilities have gone up to now 20%. Yesterday there were 0. Next name on deck is Jerry, and following Jerry would be Karen, although only looking like we'd be having Jerry in the short term here. Development area is farther off to the west, but notice this has shifted a little bit to the northeast compared with yesterday. Long-range models do indicate a likely recurve scenario with this. Is it set in stone? Absolutely not. Things could certainly change, but it looks to probably follow the trend that we've seen with most other storms that have come out of the main development region so far this year. A track to the west-northwest, then due north, then out to sea to the north and east. So we'll see if this one plays to that tune as well. If not, there were a few models 36 hours ago or so that was showing more of a southern track. I will tell you it's got a very low latitude right now, so that would lend to the possibility of it tracking farther to the south. And if it does make it into the Caribbean and activity in the eastern Pacific quells a little bit and the wind shear drops, we could see that becoming a big issue if, in fact, it does take that track. We're right now favored to do that northwest and then recurve out to sea. All right, here's how it presents on satellite, satellite imagery. We're at 20% and 60 within 7 days. Infrared satellite imagery here, a little bit better look of it. We get a little bit closer look, but I want to switch things up to show you visible satellite imagery, and we'll go back to earlier today. You'll see it. It'll pop up here in just a second, but overall, the imagery does show a very broad rotation that's developing well to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Doesn't look like it'll cooperate with me once again this evening, but visible satellite imagery, just take my word for it, is a very broad spin out here to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Now, what do the models do with things going forward from here? The American and the European. The American GFS is going to be in the yellow. Red will be European. And you can see here, by the time we get to the middle of this upcoming week, GFS is the only camp that shows anything at all. Shows by that point in time a hurricane. Pretty low trajectory, too, on this with a low latitude. But watch what happens here by the end of the week. It does go right across the northern Leeward Islands, possibly bringing impacts to these areas. But, again, nothing with the European. Going out to next weekend and beyond, there's that recurve scenario here, possibly even to the east of Bermuda, at least according to the latest run of the GFS. this will change big time, and maybe we'll get some agreement with the European model. But typically what's happened this season is when the GFS hints at something, it usually backs off of it pretty quickly thereafter, especially if it doesn't have support from the European model. We'll see if it's different this time around. Maybe the European comes around and starts to show some development there. We'll see. All right, here is Octave, and here is the newly formed Priscilla, pretty large system here. And then right behind that is another area of possible development here over the moderate range over the next 7 days. Here's Octave, still a tropical storm. Remember yesterday we were showing the track. It was kind of sitting and spinning in a weak steering environment. Well, now it looks to be actually tracking back to the east. Still maintaining a tropical storm status and eventually weakening here as we get to the middle of this week. And then Priscilla, forecast now to become a hurricane, possibly up to a Category 2 hurricane by the early parts of this upcoming week. 100-mile-per-hour winds, does stay offshore, but with close proximity to the Pacific coast of Mexico, likely some very big waves there coming up to the Baja Sur, California there over the next couple days. So we did update our scorecard. 16 named storms now in the Eastern Pacific. Likely we'll have 9 hurricanes as Priscilla's forecast to strengthen into a hurricane, 3 major so far, compared with the Atlantic at 9, 4 hurricanes, and 3 majors so far. All right, coming up after a quick break, stick around. We've got tropical trivia. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. Tonight's tropical trivia question is, what's the most intense hurricane on record in the Atlantic Basin in October? Is it Hazel, Mitch, Wilma, or Matthew? Pretty recent, Matthew, 2016. I'll have the answer for you probably on Monday on Hurricane Hub Live. Tomorrow night, meteorologist Evan Stewart will be here. Or excuse me, Hunter Force will be here tomorrow night for Hurricane Hub Live. Reminder, we are here every night, 7 days a week at 8 p.m. for the latest on the tropics. We'll see you back here tomorrow.